Absolutely. So we've got Kaiser with us, and Kaiser, I could be wrong, it looks like is an atheist and is coming in saying the atheist experience is intellectually fraudulent because the issue of God is not complex enough to warrant a full show. Kaiser, can you put some legs under that argument?
Fraud. Wow, man.
Well, the
charging us
leg
with
is
fraud.
Pretty straightforward and devastating, and that's atheism. So there's simply not a way to define the idea of God sufficiently to have a rational discussion about. And that,
if somebody thinks that a mind exists, well, hold on, let me ask you. If someone thinks that a mind, so they're like, hey, what I mean when I say the grunt God is there's this mind that exists alone. It's the first item of any item, and it creates the external world, maybe a universe, but just things that are external from its own mind. Can you understand that concept?
Well,
I'm just genuine. I'm not trying to do a trap. I'm just wondering if you agree with that.
Always and only exist. Well, it's a metaphysical category error because minds only exist in brains. Brains are purely biological and purely here on Earth, as far as we know. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not going to contest with your view on the mind there because I agree. I don't think that minds make sense outside of that. And I'm just trying to understand if you're just saying these kind of pinpoint parts of the analysis that, well, look, I possess these other concepts like mind, like I do too. I don't think that it makes sense to talk about what I had said earlier, a mind that doesn't have some first person perspective on third person objects or something like a guitar or something. That seems to divorce itself from a mind, the same way that if I said, Justin is taller, but I didn't say he was taller than anything. He's just taller. I divorce it from, a reference. That doesn't seem to make any sense. So I'm on board with you there, but what I'm not on board with this is that you've exhausted every single way, and that you can't kind of somewhat grasp, because for me, I might not be able to put the words to it, like necessary and sufficient conditions or whatever for what a God is, but I think I understand what somebody's saying. They're saying that there's this superhuman being thing that's the first thing, and it creates the universe. And I think I can understand what they're saying, and I can understand when I say I don't think that thing exists.
Let me taxonomize this metaphysically and epistemologically. So there's only all versions of God are one of three things. They're either synonymous with everything or first force or love or what have you, in which case we can just ignore it because it's the same thing. Or they're an untestable force by some, theistic whatever, or they're a personified untestable force. There's no other version of God but those three things. And none of those three things can be verified.
Just last thing, real quick. I'm not understanding how
from fiction.
Okay, sorry. I'm somewhat frustrated with this because the whole claim is that we're committing some type of intellectual fraud. But the only thing I'm hearing is that Kaiser is conceptually impoverished on his own accord to think of God. I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just that you can't have the concept of a God, and then now you're casting the charge on us for fraud when how do you know that me and Justin don't possess that concept? In fact, how do you know that Justin, who was a theist, didn't possess that concept and then go, hey, I no longer believe in that thing anymore, right? So it seems weird when you say what your whole goal is to charge intellectual fraud, upon us, but the basis, right, the epistemic reasons that you give, that's the language you like to use, so the epistemic reasons that you give are things that you think. Right. I mean, but you haven't spent a day with me, Ben, Justin, or anybody to know that maybe we can give you an analysis of the concept. Right. The fact that you don't possess the concept, it doesn't follow that therefore the atheist experience is committing fraud because there's not a topic here to talk about. Right. You have a giant leap. That's just a non sequitur. So sorry, Justin. I just had to get that out.
No, I totally get it.
The issue, and yet you still belabor it day after day.
Well, so let me help you out, Kaiser. So this is the situation, right? You don't believe in a God. You don't think God is even something that can be well defined. The problem is that we live in a society where lots of people believe in a God, and they've defined that God. They've given God the definition that they think applies to God. And what we're saying is, whatever this thing is in your mind, whatever this thing is that you think our kids need to learn about in school, we don't think that thing exists. It doesn't matter what you think the definition of God is. It doesn't matter if you think there's no definition of God. What matters is we live in a society where lots of people believe in a God, and they believe that that God has attributes, and that they think there's consequences for not believing in these gods. So that's why we do the show, is because it affects the world that we live in. And we want to live in a world where people believe as many true things as possible and as few false things as possible. And what that means is that when we're surrounded by people who want people to believe in a God, we're pushing back and saying, no, there's no good reason to believe in any of these God concepts. It doesn't matter if you define God differently or if God is undefinable.
It can be a flubabla. Right. If it's causing what we see, we're going to have a problem with the flubabla, and we're going to talk about it. There's no intellectual fraud there. That's insane.
Yeah.
So anyways, an evangelical atheist. So, I'm not debating anything whatsoever about the point that means. Make about God.
So then you're the intellectual fraud.
Much simpler than what the conversation.
So Kaiser, if you're an evangelical atheist, that means you're a fraud, because you're basically critiquing us for being evangelical atheists, for having a call-in show where we exposit the virtues of atheism and the detriment of religion, and then you yourself saying that that's what you do. You're an evangelical atheist, so you're a hypocrite. You're the fraud here. Which means maybe you should be a theist. You'd fit in really well with them.
I have no problem with atheists. I have friends that are like, hey, I don't think this concept makes sense. Right? I don't think there's anything there. I don't even think it's propositional. But that doesn't take away anything that Justin said. Right? The fact that there might not be something there is one thing that someone can still say, I don't believe in that thing. Right? And they can also combat the types of legislation and things that follow from beliefs like that. Right? The actions. So. This just seems kind of pointless. Oh, you dropped? Yeah, I was going to say, I'll probably just drop you, because this seems kind of pointless, because you just kind of got wrecked on your own point.